Welcome to Powering Through Life, and I'm your host, Teresa Sims. Each week on Powering Through Life, my guest and I will discuss a special topic that is close to their heart. Together, we will explore the challenges they have faced in life and learn what strategies and tools they have used to power through their life. So welcome to Powering Through Life. Hey, and welcome again today to Powering Through Life. And I have a wonderful guest here today with me by the name of Jennifer Szeghi. Correct, Jennifer?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Right. Good. Jennifer has worked with children, adolescents, and parents in the juvenile justice system, psychiatric unit, and outpatient mental health treatment facilities. Wow, that's impressive. She has identified many mental health disorders can be avoided through parents' understanding and meeting the developmental needs of their children while teaching emotional regulation, coping skills to children. Ooh, this is
Yeah.
going to be good.
Yes, I have 17 years of experience in this field.
Wow,
And
Jennifer,
like you
welcome.
mentioned, all different kinds of environments, and it's been so helpful, especially to my practice that I've created actually over 12 years ago.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, welcome to Powering Through Life. This
Thank
is
you. I'm so happy to be here.
yeah, it's a great day to be doing this, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your topic today is making a beautiful picture out of life's puzzle pieces.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So, I can recall back to when I started, when I graduated from undergrad. And of course, when we start off very young in life, and actually found out it's still technically adolescence until you're 25 years old, but we have all these great ideas and how perfect life is going to go for us. And, we have a starting line and here's where we'd like to finish. And at that point in life, we have no clue that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And sometimes we don't understand how those ups and downs fit into the picture. But I think, especially in the work that I do, I see that a lot of times crisis really propel us into what our meaning in life and how we can help others. It's really hard to help others if we haven't been through those hardships either.
Very
Yeah.
true. And it sometimes you find that it takes that one really dramatic, catastrophic thing
Mm-hmm.
to propel the person to change and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to go this way instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, the first puzzle piece that I really questioned on how it fit into my life, I was about 21 years old at the time, and I was trying to figure out, where I was going to go to graduate school because I did want to become a psychologist and help people with their mental health issues. And I received the acceptance to the grad school that I wanted to go to on the same day that I found out I was pregnant. And so at that point, it was very much of how am I going to get through grad school with a little child in tow? But at the same time, I did not want to have any regrets. And I definitely did not want to have any kind of negative feelings towards my child because it wasn't his fault. It was definitely consequences that I, needed to figure out how I was going to deal with. So I did know that if I threw myself into graduate school, I would find a way out on the other side of, and graduate. And I also thought, he's really young, by the time I, had him, some of the accommodations I could make for him, and he probably wouldn't even remember. And in fact, he doesn't remember, what the experience was like. So I, accepted the acceptance letter and I went to graduate school. And it was really quite interesting because I didn't even tell anybody I was pregnant. And my colleagues, would question, each other. Apparently there was talk, but I was able to hide my pregnancy for about 7.5 months. I actually moved 350 miles away from friends or family. So I didn't know anybody where I was going. And sometimes when you think later on in life, like, how did you ever make that decision? That didn't sound logical whatsoever. And I definitely have those thoughts of like, what was I thinking? But I definitely actually turned out very well. And I had my son in January. So when we came back from the first break after the first semester, they could definitely tell I was pregnant by then. And my advisor, after I actually had my son, a couple weeks later, he wrote me a letter or an email and said, let me know if you need any help on the upcoming birth of your child. And I said, oh, I'm fine. I already had him. Thanks. So I was just very determined, to make it through. But some of the accommodations that I did make, when he was young, it's important for parents to read books to their children. Well, at infancy, they really don't know what you're saying to them. So I read a lot of my psychology books to him. And, there were a lot of papers that I wrote with him, propped up on my chest, and I'm leaning back on the couch with my laptop on my lap, and I type papers like that. So I was really trying to do, making sure that he was getting nurtured and that I was, learning everything that I could while in graduate school. And because of this situation, being so young, being a single parent, not having that extended support around me because I didn't have friends or family that lived close, I made sure that I dug into like the child development information and adolescent development information just so that I gave my child the best chance, in developing in a healthy manner, because a lot of the statistics were actually going against him. So, there was one part in life of like, I don't understand why this is happening right now. I had these plans of going to graduate school and it's going to be so hard, but it actually really worked out because I gained so much information about child development and adolescent development. And that actually ended up being more of my focus. So once I had graduated from graduate school with a master's degree, I became a child adolescent mental health therapist. And so that's where I understood the child developmental needs. And I understood and saw how, sometimes when these needs are not getting met, that's when the children start to act out and have more of the behavior problems, or they're feeling more anxious. And teaching parents, what these developmental needs are so that they can satisfy those needs. And this can prevent the child from going on and having, the chronic mental health issues in a lot of situations. In fact, the American Psychological Association has acknowledged, some of these childhood disorders are actually being way overdiagnosed. And so in some of these situations, like, like ADHD, some of the mood disorders, the anxiety, again, if they were, those needs were met, they wouldn't have that kind of reaction. So definitely teaching the parents those developmental needs that the children have, as well as teaching children, coping skills and emotional regulation skills. And I think everybody just needs them in life. Like, we are not going to escape life without stressors. So when they're stressors, if we know how to approach these stressors and look at them as obstacles in life that we're going to get over, instead of, something, the stressor that's going to just weigh us down and cause us more like that physiological reaction that we have when we feel stressed. We know that leads to a lot of physical illnesses now. So if we can learn how to self-regulate that and prevent that from, having it escalate all the time, or even, the psychological responses that the stressors have, such as like the depression and the anxiety, so we can prevent it before it even happens. I know I listened to actually a couple of your podcasts, and some of the women that have talked on your podcast are so amazing, and some of the situations that they've come out of, very amazing. But I think some of them can acknowledge that sometimes when people get in that hole of like depression or anxiety, it is so hard to get out. So my approach is, why not just go ahead and teach kids, it should be part of the regular school curriculum, right? Teach kids how to identify, when they're experiencing stressors, and how to cope. What are some responses they can have in order to get themselves back on track? So I feel like, with the information I dug into because I got pregnant in graduate school, really helped me apply that more in practicing and helping others.
Well, your son was a gift to you in so many different ways, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
He took you
Yeah.
down a completely different path. But that's good, though. I agree with, you needing to teach children from a young age how to handle what's happening to them, what's going on with them. Because I could have used that when I was young.
Mhm.
being physically abused at home and neglected and not having enough food, but going to school and being told I talk too much all the time. That was my thing. I talk too much. Go
Oh.
figure. I host a podcast now, so I can talk all I want. But yeah, I was always getting into trouble for something.
Mhm.
But which came first, the behavior or the situation that occurred?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a fine line sometimes, but had I had someone that could have taken me aside and taught me how to handle the anxiety of having to go home and facing that fear again of what am I going to walk into today,
Mhm.
might have helped alleviate a lot of the physical things I have going on now because of being in the chronic fight or flight my entire life.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit to the work that you're doing, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Um, well, there was actually another situation that I ran into when I moved back here to Ohio, in which the same requirements that Illinois has, because I went to graduate school in Illinois, is different to get licensed as a counselor
Oh,
here in Ohio. So I actually I took the test and I took some extra credit hours to try to become licensed first here in Ohio, and Ohio had changed their law, so I couldn't get licensed as a counselor here in Ohio. So I tried in Kentucky, and the reason why this was because I actually had a master's degree in psychology. And it used to be that all like the psychology, the social work, the counselors, they kind of all, same ideologies and could be licensed by, any of the boards. Well, Kentucky still accepted, they said, a master's degree in a related field. So I took all the extra credit hours I needed, and I took the test, passed it the first time, and applied for it. And they rejected my application, stating that psychology does not relate to counseling, despite they actually had psychologists who were supervising their counselees. And I actually took that to arbitration, and the arbitrator agreed with me on, that doesn't make sense. If a psychologist can supervise a counselee, obviously they're related. But there was this small law in Kentucky that said related fields are not psychology, criminal justice, and a couple other fields. So unfortunately, my goal of being a mental health therapist and opening my own practice wasn't successful because I could not get licensed as a counselor. And in order to get licensed as a psychologist, I would actually have to go on and get my doctorate. And right now that's not in the budget because that's like another $100,000.
oh my God, that's crazy.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, it's mind-boggling.
Right. Oh my gosh. I was, again, thinking again, starting off on that, starting point at a young age, and here's everything I'm going to do. And then I overcame my first obstacle of going to, graduate school with my child, and got that finished, moved back thinking I'm going to get back on track here. And then to find out, nope, you can't get licensed unless you go for 4 more years of school and, another $100,000. So, then I decided, okay, well, I will take, this approach that I believe that I'm seeing as a child mental health therapist, and I was being supervised. And I decided, well, why not take more preventative measures instead of, diagnosing these children and them having labels throughout life? Why not take a parent-child coach approach to just directly teaching the parents and the children those coping skills without having to label them? So so here's the second puzzle piece that I'm not sure how fits in, and I'm very upset that it does not go along with my plan in life. But I was able to create a business, and very much so much of a need, because there are a lot of parents out there that they don't automatically want to have their child diagnosed, or they're scared that their child's automatically going to be put on medication.
Yeah.
And this route of parent-child coaching looks at, well, what can we change first in the child's environment to make sure there's nothing going on here? And, if there is, we can resolve it and get the child back on track. before automatically, going for that label or going for that medication. So I started that business of successful parenting 12 years ago, and it's still going strong despite that I didn't even have any business or marketing classes at all during undergrad or graduate school.
And you saved yourself $100,000.
I love that optimism. Yeah, absolutely.
That is fantastic. And I really like what you're doing, because I know when my my older son was in grade 3, I used to work for the school he went to. But that year I let my job go and I stayed at home full time. I was looking after my grandmother, and my son started to become a problem at school, and the teacher kept an eye on it, and we were friends. So we knew what was happening every day, and he would not do his work, but he was sitting there, staring around the classroom kind of thing. And that was totally not him.
Mm-hmm.
He was always a good student. And so she said to me, I think you need to take him to a child doctor and, all that sort of thing. So we did. Went through all the testing. Oh yes, he's ADHD. Mm-hmm. Yes, he can't concentrate. He can't do this. He can't do that. So Ritalin came out of the woodwork, and he got put on Ritalin. I didn't know, didn't have a lot of experience with it at that point in the time. But after about a month of my son being on Ritalin, he was not the same child. He reverted into a shell that, you couldn't get anything out of him. Mm-hmm. And I said to my husband at the time, this is done. Mm-hmm. So I went back to the doctor and I said, I have this child who used to be happy and have fun and laugh, and now he just sits there. Mm. Is that what your medicine does? If so, I don't want it. Mm-hmm. He said, well, we may have misdiagnosed him. And based on what the extra material the teacher sent in, it turns out that my son was just bored.
That was exactly what I was going to ask. That would be my first question. Is this not challenging enough for him? And he's like, I've already got this and I'm checking out. So that would have been my first concern there. Let's see some different ways we can challenge him. Absolutely.
He ended up in the gifted program instead, rather than needing a special,
And then did he excel in the gifted program?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So I'm so glad that you were observant of his behavior and knowing, okay, this is not the route for my child. And what's really sad, and I'm just going to admit this because I've heard it from several psychiatrists, is they've told me, do you know how to diagnose a child who has ADHD? You just put them on a stimulant and see if they respond to the stimulant. And that to me is just, again, my approach is let's try everything else before we automatically put the child on medication. But I heard that from a couple psychiatrists. And I do want to say that's been over a decade ago that I've heard that. But it sounds like that's kind of the approach your son's doctor had taken of, okay, well, maybe it's not it. But unfortunately, it did, like you say, cause him to revert some, and he wasn't acting like, your child. And that can be very difficult, and children have a hard time understanding their emotions and what they're feeling anyways. And then having some kind of medication that really changes that.
And the other aspect is the doctor wasn't looking at the whole picture either. He wasn't looking at home life. So what happened in the home life? Well, mom no longer worked at the school where the son was going to school. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have his mom there every day. So that was a big missing piece for him. So he was not knowing how to react about that. So they didn't look at the whole picture. They just looked at, well, he's not listening in class. Okay. Well, there's a lot of ways you can do it, but I like your approach. Like the holistic approach is an awful lot better. Eliminate what you can first before you go to the drugs. And I mean, there are needs sometimes, right? We can't say that
absolutely. And I have worked with children that really do need that stimulant, that medication to help them even focus on some of the skills or something, that they need to be taught. But another thing I think we have to be careful of in our society today is, they're kids. We still have some time to figure out what exactly it is. Let's try to challenge your son a little bit more and see how he deals with that. Let's try to see if it makes sure he's understanding things, or is there a bully in the classroom that is causing me anxiety or to feel bad in the depressed mood or anxiousness also causes loss of concentration too. So there's so many things, and I know there was a period of time where teachers would automatically go to, oh, it's ADHD, and it's like, oh no, there's a lot of things that can be going on here. So let's kind of dig in and figure out what is going on. Because another thing that, as a mental health therapist for children and adolescents that I had seen, and again, this was back in like 2005 to 2010, but when kids are put on medication, and even if they do need it, I think it's important for parents to understand that people have a tolerance that is developed to drugs. So if a child starts young on medication, they're going to have to continue to increase the dosage. And sometimes what happens is they reach a max on one medication and then they have to try a couple different other medications. And sometimes what they do is they call it a cocktail, to where they mix medications together in order to get an effect. So, in our society, realizing, these kids are young, they don't have a whole lot of, responsibility or expectations, and they'll be able to catch up. So why not take some time to change some things in the environment instead of, going directly to put them on medication?
Yeah.
I think anything in elementary school, I don't think there's any rush to figure out, like, okay, or I shouldn't say, there is a rush to figure out, but not to automatically go to, they're not paying attention, put them on medication. You have at least a couple months, if not even a couple years there to figure it out, and they won't fall like significantly behind to where they can't catch up.
Yeah, there are some, and from working in the school system, there are some children that need the intervention right away.
Mm-hmm.
Because the issue is really severe. But there's the other ones. And I mean, my son was like 30 years ago. So that's when Ritalin was first coming in, and it was big and everybody was on it. And it's a horrible nightmare. Would never do that again. And it was just, he wasn't being stimulated enough in the right way. And the mom not being there anymore for him was an issue. But we found ways around that. I mean, I would walk into school, I would pick him up from school. So we had our time together and all that sort of thing. And it's difficult to read a child, especially when they haven't even developed yet.
Yes.
I suppose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. But I really do enjoy working with children and adolescents, because I do feel like there's that extra layer of challenge where adults can come right out and say, well, this is where this is coming from. Sometimes as a parent or, working with children, you sometimes feel like you're going in circles and not getting anything out of them. But that's just kind of the process that it goes into. You'll go in circles for a little bit, and then you'll dig a layer deeper. And it's so interesting to hear like the different perspectives that children have about their life, and really, and then when you find that, and for them to have that, aha moment, or, be able to figure out what's going on, and, they're accomplishing their goals, and how proud they are of themselves, that they're choosing positive behaviors, and that they're not automatically just a bad kid like they thought they were, it's just, that's what I live for. I love helping parents and children get to that point of, yeah, everybody has their struggles. Everybody has, these stress responses. But that, that doesn't mean that's the way you have to respond. Let's figure out positive ways for you to respond. And so those are just amazing moments.
Although must be such rewarding work.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. I thought about going into the child aspect as well, but I stick with the adults basically for my coaching practice, because sometimes the issues from childhood are not resolved, and they hang on to us, and then we become adults with these issues that we had from childhood. And I've noticed that if an adult is not successful in their personal professional life, it usually, and not always, but usually has something to do with an event or a situation that occurred to them when they were young.
I would say definitely, probably over 50% of the time. Definitely a lot of things stem from childhood.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you. I thank you for, being one of those people who help children recover from what had happened in their childhood. Of course, I try to, my angle is being proactive and trying to get, help parents, even help parents with their own stress regulate, or, emotional regulation responses. And that is such an important aspect of what I do too, is making sure the parent's okay, so then the child will also be okay. Because research has found that children, even as young as 6 months, can pick up on the mood of the parent and exhibit that same behavior and mood.
Oh, yeah.
So that's so important. And I think, people are really doing the best that they can, but sometimes we don't always have all the education and information that we need. And I think that's one area that, so I really believe that parents just are doing the best they can, but this is one area that in our society has been neglected, on really providing this information for parents. And if the parent is struggling with those stressors, it's really hard to fulfill the needs of kids. So making sure that the parents are okay, and taking care of their needs, so that they can also take care of the needs of their child as well. But unfortunately, there are so many people that, the parents didn't have that information. And now, like you said, you're working with them as adults and trying to help them recuperate from what they've experienced as children.
Mm-hmm. And that came about for me because I was the child
Mm,
and I had no help.
mm,
And now, since since my car accident in 2013, I've been doing a lot of searching and a lot of uncovering and a lot of self-work, self-care. And it came through the help of an NLP hypnotherapist, that I actually needed to raise my younger self. I needed to do the inner child work
mm-hmm.
and heal that child and raise that child up to a healthy adult. And until I did that, I couldn't be a full, I could, but I wouldn't be as an effective coach
Mm-hmm.
had I not done that work. So,
Yeah, and that's so that healing process really
yeah.
is somewhat what it is. I think there's so many of us carry so much around, because it's not healed. And there is a process, like you said, having to go back and raise your child self in order to have that full healing. So it's not that heavy weight. And when I say heavy weight, it's not just like psychological weight. It is like, it takes on a physical component of where the person just feels heavy. So yeah,
That's
that's
so true. When I finished writing my book about my family and lies and all the secrets that they kept that affected me and still are, I decided to break the cycle. But when I finished writing the truth about that, my husband said to me, "Your shoulders just dropped about 4 inches." And honestly, Jennifer, it felt like a weight
mm-hmm.
of an elephant came off of me.
Mm-hmm.
It was so freeing. And
Yes.
I did not realize, and a lot of us don't, that weight we've been carrying around. I was carrying it around for 56 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you know, from stuff that hadn't healed or hadn't been dealt with from when it should have been dealt with. And thank goodness for people like you that can help the children now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, where were you when I, no. There
Well,
wasn't anything for me when I
yeah.
was growing up. It was the church and it was the school and it was family life. And that was all there was. And, one was connected to the other. So if you did bad in school, either the teacher told your parents or they told the church. And then the church gave the father or mother a call, and boy, were you in trouble then. So, but the work that you're doing is so powerful. It needs to be shared. And I am so glad we got to talk about this today. So what are 3 steps, 3 things that you would recommend to our listeners today that they should start doing or maybe stop doing when they're dealing with their children and, situations?
So the very first thing, like we discussed before, is self-care. I think, especially females, we're very good at, being caretakers of other people. And I know myself, I have to remind myself of this step all the time, because I can go 100 miles an hour and I can be feeling great. Like, no, I don't need to take time for myself. And then I just hit a wall. And then I'm like, I feel like, why am I moving so slow? Why am I not getting things accomplished? I feel irritable with my children. And so I have to remind myself, oh, you haven't been, taking time for yourself, and you have to take a step back and first, take care of you. And I kind of relate this to a car, because, as women, we can put ourselves down and shame ourselves. But if we did not put gas in our car, and it ran out of gas, we wouldn't yell at it and telling, like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you keep going? Right. And so it's the same with us. Like, to give energy to others, we have to fill ourselves back up too, because we can get depleted. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is listen to your kids without judgment. If you really want to help your child and guide your child down the right path, it's important that they're able to freely express themselves on what's going on, because then you can know, where is this problem coming from? Why are they starting to become more irritable or anxious or acting out? And they'll be more willing to tell you. If a parent is very, doesn't listen, doesn't put their phone down and give undivided attention, the child picks up on that very easily, and then they stop talking about those things. And so then they become repressed, and then the child feels that heaviness, and it just, starts that cycle. So, number two, definitely just listen, non-judgmental, so that you can get an idea of what your child's experiencing. Let them know, what, it's normal to have feelings. If they're upset with you or mad at you, okay, let them express that in a healthy way to you. And the third thing I would say is making sure that you're just scheduling in quality time with your child. In these days, we get so busy. Sometimes I see children have multiple activities that they're running to every single night, and that can be anxiety provoking. But as busy as we are, as having homes of two working parents, and all the kids' activities, it's really about quality time. We can't give them a whole lot of quantity time, but when you're with them, make sure that you're mindful and you're, engaging in the activities they enjoy doing, and being there with them 100%, so that they are getting those needs met.
Yeah. And I don't assume that quality time is taking them to an event where they're playing a sport. That's not good quality time. That's just time that you're together, but you're not really having quality. So sitting at home, reading a book together, doing a puzzle together, playing a game together, or engaging in an activity they like to do, and then asking them questions about it. Why do you like doing this so much? I used to play the first Nintendo with my boys when it came out, and the second and the third. That was our time together. It was silly, but we would spend hours sitting there laughing, having fun, enjoying it. And I could play just as well as they could by the end of it, which is not a lot, but we were spending quality time together. And, they would always say to me, Mom, why doesn't Dad play with us? Dad didn't want to, because Dad actually couldn't make the games work. So rather than looking stupid or feeling stupid, he decided to just stay away. So he was sending the boys a message then. Yeah. Which was unfortunate, but he spent time with them in other ways. But, you have to, quality time is the best. Not what you think is quality, what your child needs. It's the child's needs, right? The child's
absolutely needs. And if they are not getting that positive attention, they will find ways to get negative attention.
Oh, they'll create the negative attention.
Exactly.
Exactly. What attention is attention, no matter whether it's good or bad. It's still attention, right?
Yeah.
Well, how can our listeners get in touch with you, Jennifer? I know we're going to have all of your connections put up on the websites when your segment comes up, but just a quick how can they get in touch with you?
Yes. So my website is successfulparentingllc.com, all one word, all lowercase. And I actually have a Facebook group that I put like parenting tips and, I do a segment called Raising Gen Z where we look at the different things happening in society and how that can affect child development in ways that parents can kind of compensate for that. And so that group is on Facebook. It's facebook.com/groups/from parent stress to parent success. So I know that's long, but if you go in the search bar of Facebook and type in from parent stress to parent success, all one word, it will bring my group up. And that group's called Successful Parents.
Perfect. Now, what about grandparents?
Oh, that's a really good point. I actually have some grandparents in the group as well. Some grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, as well as grandparents who just like the tips of interacting with their grandchildren and, don't have the responsibility of raising them. So yeah, grandparents are welcome in the group as well. I've worked with grandparents before when they are, in the parenting role. So that clientele is welcome as well.
That's fantastic, because I know for a lot of working moms, grandparents play a big role in the child's life. And if they weren't successful being parents, maybe they wouldn't be successful being, grandparents. But there's always hope. We can always change our thoughts and how we approach things and keep learning. For goodness sakes, it's easy, doesn't hurt.
Oh my goodness, yes. Like soak up as much information and knowledge as you can.
Absolutely. And just think of the little life that you're, adding joy to and making rich because you're spending quality time with them.
Yes. And one more thing I'd like to say, and I'm sure you can attest to this, of, having that good connection with your child is so important because they grow up someday. They're going to go off and have their own life. But if you have that good connection with them, they will stay connected. And what's really cool is that, sometimes parents want to be friends with their, children, especially teenagers, and that doesn't work out. But once the child becomes an adult, if there was that healthy parenting style there, they're actually friends as adults, So this isn't just for the time being. This isn't just from birth to 18 years old. This is really setting the foundation, for the rest of their lives on how the relationship is going to be.
Yeah, it's a lifetime relationship, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And we need to nurture it and care for it and practice. Jennifer, thank you so much for being part of it. Yeah, this was fantastic. I'm so glad we got to do this. And I think I'd like to have you back again because I think there's a few more topics we could chat about.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, anytime. Let me know.
Sounds great. Well, thanks again for listening to Powering Through Life. And thank you to my wonderful guest, Jennifer Szeghi. Take care. That brings to a close another great, inspiring interview on Powering Through Life. Thank you to my incredible guest for sharing your thoughts and wisdoms with our listeners. If you would like to connect with us, go to www.teresasims.com. And there you will also find all the previous segments from many amazing and inspiring people. Remember, don't be shy. Reach out if you have any questions or just leave me a comment. So thank you once again for listening to Powering Through Life.